Where did you like to play as a child? I ask this question a lot because childhood memories shape us into the people we become. Welcome to Play It Forward, a worthy podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Ritson. Thanks so much for joining me. I talk a lot about play. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an educator, and I'm a playground designer. So I want to gather some of my favourite people who are advocates of children and nature and create a space to have an honest conversation about getting more kids outside. The power of play is very often underestimated, and I think we all need a little more play in our lives.
Welcome to Play It Forward, the Worthy podcast, where we dive into the heart of childhood, the power of play, and the people changing the way we see both. Today, I'm joined by someone who has lit up classrooms and inspired educators across the world. Sally Haughey, founder of Fairy Dust Teaching, now known as Wunderled. Sally has built a global movement grounded in wonder, creativity, the belief that childhood should be sacred and not rushed. In a reminder for me to slow down. Her work reminds us to play. Learning truly happens when we are playing, and that's when it comes alive, where curiosity leads and joy follows. She teaches teachers, a storyteller, a guide for anyone who believes education should nurture the soul, not just fill the mind. Sally, it's an honor to have you here today. Welcome to Play It Forward.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. What a beautiful intro. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've been fortunate and blessed to connect with you on a visit to Tulsa, see your work firsthand, feel your heart and hear your words for what you do. So it's been a long time coming to have you on, but I'm just so pleased to share what you do with the listeners.
Thank you. I know I found a kindred spirit that we are really standing for the children, completely. We're mission driven, which I
Absolutely.
appreciate so much in you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a nice reminder. Sometimes it can feel alone advocating and shouting out and what feels like a void sometimes. But to hear some voices back, it's reassuring.
It is. It is. And I just have to shout out one of our connectors, Sandra Duncan, who is
Yes.
such a bright, bright light in our industry. And I'm so grateful that she connected us.
Yeah, 100%. She is one of the go-getters and the OG influencer of the sector.
She is.
So she just visited Australia and I was like, I got to keep up. She just turned 80 and I was like, I got to lift my game a bit here.
She is a powerhouse. I hope I am the same at 80.
Same. Anyone that knows her says that exact same thing. Hope I'm like that at 80. It's great.
Yeah.
As we start with all our guests, as a bit of a pull back the curtain, it says so much. Where did you like to play as a child?
I have very distinct memories. I was in Pullman, Washington as a little girl. My father was going to get his PhD at the time, and we lived in a house that backed up to a big rolling field and big, huge bushes. And so I spent my time in the fields and under the bushes. So the bushes had this little crevice in it that my best friend and I would sit and, pretend to cook, pretend to live there, and then go out hunting into the fields. And I even was attacked by bees one time. It had 10 stings and it never daunted me.
Oh,
You know?
power to you. As someone that's
Yeah.
allergic to bees, I'll keep you
Whoa.
that.
Yeah.
Well, it happens. And how did that experience influence what you do today?
The thing that was so marked about that, and I remembered it from age 3 to 7 was the time that I lived there. And I have vivid memories of feeling like I could create something that never was before. Like as a child, I had my hands in the dirt. I had my hands on the rocks, the wheat field, and it was malleable. It was like my imagination was using the raw pieces of nature to fuel my passion in life, my curiosity, my hopes and dreams. And to this day, those experiences live in me as a driver. I know it gave me who I am today.
It's so transferable.
Yeah.
I love that saying. I was able to create something that has never been. And learning that at a young age, phenomenal. We are here in Australia, got a big listenership from Australia. They might not be aware that you have over 240,000 educators in your system, over 120 countries. So for those listeners, can we get to what Wonderland is? Can you?
Wonderland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wonderled, not Wonderland. It is a
Yeah.
Wonderland.
It
Wonderled.
is. Truly.
So
Truly.
tell us everything what it's about for those listeners that might not have come across it yet. And we'll have 350,000 in no time.
Right. I started in 2010 as a blogger. I was teaching in a kindergarten, very academic, and I needed the outlet. I needed to show other ways than worksheets and all of that. So I started just blogging. And then I started working for a Reggio Emilia inspired school, and I started blogging that. And that's really when something magical happened and people started coming to my site like overnight, tens of thousands of people looking inside of this school that I was at. And it was really remarkable to me because I could feel that I had the capacity to share what myself and the work of my colleagues were doing, and that was impacting children around the world. Now, imagine you're in your classroom and the work you're doing is impacting children on the other side of the planet. If that's not a dopamine hit, I don't know what is. It's like, I was like, and I really was humbled by it. And with the school that I was at and the educators I was sharing their classroom, I did, fun things for them out of that readership that I built. Um, yeah. So what happened in 2020, I was doing fairy dust teaching going along, and this is just how I roll. So this is really transparent. It was 2020. I was living in Paris, France, and it was like really sharp lockdown compared to the US. And I had a dream of someone handing me a magazine. It was this most beautiful magazine, and it said Wonderled, and it had children playing in the forest. And I woke up and I told my beloved John, I said, I have to rename my company. He goes, why? I said, I had a dream of a magazine. And
True.
that's still
That's
today.
consistent.
It's like, and I think for me, I was thinking about this the other day, talking to someone else, is that Wonderlet is literally an expression of my own passion and play. It doesn't necessarily make business sense in some ways, but I absolutely love it. And just like, the way the fields behind my house as a child impacted me, that vision in a dream impacted me,
Yeah.
and I have to honor it. And so for me, business is an art form. Just, it's a play form. It's like my passion loves to play. And I think whenever I lose that, I'll hang up my shingle and go on. It's like,
Yeah. And that
yeah,
feeds back into what you were saying, that's creating something that's never been.
yeah,
Direct
yeah.
transfer there. What's your words of encouragement to an educator that might be feeling a bit down and out or controlled by curriculum and over academics and behavioral managing? It's not a term I love, but I know people feel it. What would be your words of encouragement to them?
What I would say is that what matters the most, like if you strip everything away in your classroom, the materials, the furniture, the curriculum, what matters most is heart to heart, as Parker Palmer calls it, deep to deep. It's that relationship, who we stand there to be for that child. So I had a child in one of my classes that nothing I did made a difference. And I began to feel like a failure as an educator. I would go home, just to be honest, and get on my knees and pray every day, just praying for some way to make it through the year. Or was this a sign I needed to leave the field? Like, this is not my cup of tea. I'm not feeling progress. And what happened for me was one day I walked in, and I won't go into the long story of it, but a colleague had suggested I do a technique with this child, and I did it, and I caused utter shame in that child. He literally in front of me was shamed. And in that moment, I knew what my purpose in the classroom was. And that was to love the children for the brilliance they are and for the brilliance they're not. To be there fully, unconditionally. And with this child, he was chemically driven. So I was asking him to behave in a way he had no capacity to behave. And in that moment, I thought, it doesn't matter what another educator walking past my door thinks. It doesn't matter what the principal thinks. I am going to be here. I'm going to be here for this child. And I'm going to have them know that who they are, the way that they were born, the issues they are facing, I got them. I believe in them. Whatever I have to walk through with them, I am not here to have them comply. I am here to have them thrive. And that distinct, like, shedding of the looking good, like the shedding of I'm the best educator on the planet to no, it doesn't matter. What matters is this human being who, in reality, the word that came to me at the time is he is birthing his identity. Who am I in that? Who am I going to be as a midwife of his identity? Am I going to help him discover who he is, even in the chaos? Or am I going to have him feel like a failure because he can't control himself? His executive functioning isn't there. And it's like when you make that decision, it's like you can choose to regulate your own system and be present. It's like, does that make sense? Does that
Yeah,
communicate? Yeah.
100%. And the listeners that have listened and or people that might know me, what you just said is why I love you and what you do. It is that. It's a surrendering of yourself to serve
Boom.
is what it comes down to. And we do get caught up. We're taught. It's a learned behavior to produce as an adult. And it takes more time to sit. And I speaking to a educator in Finland, and I said, if an educator had 20 minutes a day, what's the most impactful thing you can do with that child? And it comes down to, she said, sit with the child. Just sit and be available. I'd love to hear more about that journey with that child.
Yeah. So this is
Where did
really
it go?
interesting. Yeah. Well, and I have to credit this child. I call him Corbin. It's not his real name, but I call him Corbin for his identity. He is the reason I'm here today. He was my teacher. I'm clear about that because I had an ego as an educator. Up until that point, people called me Mary Poppins, and, I had, quote, no behavior issues. Well, actually, I was in context that managed all of that. It was not me because no one has that kind of power, right? Like, it's just ridiculous to build ego on that. But with Corbin, it became a journey of I learned where to stand in his physical presence. So if I stood in front of him, it would immediately go in defense. If I stood behind him, his right ear, and I talked to him, just out of his vision into his right ear, like not in, but just here talking, he could process me. So I began to look at him as what if he has if he was born brilliant, it's up to me to find the access to his brilliance. So I started just being an observer, a researcher, and testing what worked. And he had a lot, like when he had those surges of, adrenaline and cortisol, he became violent. So I built an area, an atelier that had walls around it where he could go in and draw and express himself. So his favorite thing was to blow up people and have blood everywhere. So I gave him all the red markers and paint, and he would go in there and do that. And it gave him a safe place to express himself. And it really made a difference. The next year, when I stood outside my door welcoming the new kindergarten students coming in, he walked up to me, gave me a side hug, and said, "Mrs. Hoy, do you want me to come and take down your chairs every day?" And I said, "Corbin, that would be amazing." And every day he came in and took down my chairs. Like he knew. And to me, that really, I was like, okay, that was a tough year, but this child, I was his safe place because I loved him just the way he was and just the way he wasn't. I loved him for him. And I think that's more important than any freaking curriculum on the planet.
100%. Makes me emotional. And it's his act of service back to you. It's this reciprocal relationship. You serve him, and he's like, "Hey, let me serve you now. You're good. You've done good."
And that's like, we don't always get that feedback. He never said, "Thank you, Mrs. Hoy." He never said, "Mrs. Hoy, you saw me." He never said, but he did come back every day. He would give me a little side hug. And what he taught me was, we may not be able to see the impact, but that love is what matters. If you don't love a child in your classroom, they know it. If you love another child, like I started watching what were my eyes doing when I saw some children, like there's really cute children who say the cute things and your eyes light up when they come through the door. What about the quiet, shy, awkward child? Is my eyes not lighting up for them?
Yeah.
Like, that's not okay.
That's powerful.
That's not okay.
That's it. And sorry to jump in there.
Yeah, do.
Someone was mentioned to me about the stigma and the identity portrayed back to that child has a bigger influence on their life than like their schooling or the demographic of neighborhood they live in.
1,000%. And that the research coming out now, like from MIT, about the two-way conversation, that serve and return of, I see you, I hear you, I get you. And when we see children, they know if we see them. We can't fake it till we make it.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about brain science, is that children are wired to read incongruence. So if you smile like, "Hi, it's so good to see you," they know you're fake, because your facial mesh, a fake smile is distinctly different. It will not release oxytocin.
Yeah. And the
A
pinching
real
of
smile
the corner
will.
of the mouth. I love body language, geek out on it. But the pinching in the mouth is like the resentment.
Exactly.
The jaw
And children,
forward. They pick up on that.
they read it instantly. They don't know it, but it's like the substitute teacher thing. They're like, "Oh, we know." They're terrified.
Yeah.
I got you.
And especially children that come from an environment where they might have a high level of adverse childhood experience. They're hyper aware of it. And I think that's a gift that's been cultivated in me growing up in the really challenging household around alcoholism and things like that, that
Mhm.
hypersensitivity to read people and how they view you, because you're like, oh, this could go this way or that way. I've got to read it and
That's
adjust
exactly
my
right.
behavior to suit. So that's amazing. You mentioned there around the power of observation. From
Mhm.
a practical standpoint, a teacher's like, okay, I want to move from this instructional technique. How do they start observing opposed to dictating?
Yeah. I think the first thing is what we all know, you have to be curious, right? You have to really, as you say, geek out. Like, can I begin to understand my students by the way they approach me, by the way they're interacting with their friends? So, what I did is I took 2 students a day as my observation because it's a lot to observe, right? And when I did Waldorf training, I did Rudolf Steiner training. My mentor back in the 90s said, the child's physical manifestation will reveal everything you need to know about their soul, that it's the outer expression of the inner. Like, one of the assignments we had was to draw the ears of the child, to draw their hands. So I would, before bed at night, I would remember every child in my classroom and what their hair looked like. And what's really interesting, you'll hit a child, like, I'd count them out, okay, there's this, and then there's Billy, and then there's Emma, and then there's, Brittany, and then I'll be like, okay, there's one more. Who is it? And then I knew that there was a problem in my attention of that child. And so every night I was remembering something, the shape of their eyes, the way their mouth sits, resting face, the way they walk. Some children walk on their tippy toes, some walk back, some slumter, like, how does that child walk? So I became fascinated to know, how does this identity express itself physically? And not as something to fix, not as something to change or analyze, but as an understanding of that humanity. And I would even draw them. I would sit and draw pieces of, like, the way they were holding something, or the way they would sit on their knees in the W shape, or,
Yeah.
all of those things. And what happened for me is I fell in love with each child's, I mean, unique, I can't even put it into words, but that every child has this completely, even children with I have auditory dyslexia, like, even those like me who have processing issues, there's something magnificent just the way you are. Like, and just to get personal, like, for my own faith walk, like, there is no mistake where God is concerned. And can I behold the magnificence in front of me in all of its nuances? And my mentor told me something that to me still rules the day. She said, attention is love. And so that attention to just who they are, the way they articulate, the way they think. I even had a selective mute in my class. And I was doing all my practice of just observing, and been in multiple schools, never talked. And out of that, just taking him in, he came and sat down and started talking to me the 6th weekend,
Yeah.
because he could feel I wasn't doing anything but providing space.
W- What do you say to the people that might be listening that is like, yeah, that's good in theory, but they need to get ready for school. They need to learn how to follow directions. They need to know how to follow a task. And you engage with so many educators. What's the conversation look like when engaging with those educators?
Well, and I worked public school most of my career, so I was in highly academic, highly rigid places where a lot was expected. And I think what happens first, depending on your context, and I do honor context as decisive, you know, if you're in a really structured, highly tense um, place, like one place I worked, I made sure that in my structure of the day, the first 2 hours, I had 6 points where I was saying the child's name. So when they walked in the door, hello, I said their name. When they put whether they're eating a home lunch or school lunch, I said their name. Like, I made sure that I had contact, that I did attention, and maybe I took one noticing a day of something for each child, like what's their hair look like, you know? But I'm telling you, in the most structured environment, you can structure observation in between. Like there is no, if you're committed, you can find the way. And the benefit of doing that, like I was in this highly structured kindergarten. I did first grade as well, which was not my cup of tea, but kindergarten I love, is that the more connected you're with the children, the more you can actually have conversations. Like I had to do Dibbles testing and I had to take them all into the closet and test them, and I would, I had the ability to actually brainstorm with them. They knew I was there for them. I'd say, okay, this is what every kindergarten in the city is doing, and we have to do it too. And this is my idea about how we're going to do it. What do you guys think? I get their buy-in. Mrs. Hoy, why don't we do it this way? Why don't you do 3 kids before, recess, 3 kids after? Like I gave them voice into our process. And I think we underestimate children's willingness to be in collaboration with us. Like when we respect them as co-creators of the classroom, I, I, I I think we underestimate what children are capable of. My first grade class, I ran it open where they got to choose, but the district would come in and observe us. And so I would tell them, the district's coming in, we have to do it their way. And I would set up the class and we would put everything out like it was supposed to be. And one kid said, Joe was his name, after the team that came in and observed them doing it, a quote, to the district standards. He's like, Mrs. Hoy, this is ridiculous. They should see how we do it normally. This way is ridiculous. This makes no sense. We don't have to think, I was like, exactly, Joe, you don't. And he
That's
was
a
like,
child's voice right there.
Yeah, he was like, can't you tell them how we normally do it? But I didn't lie to them. I included them in my constraints.
Yeah.
And I think that's scary for some people, but you know,
And also, I know that by speaking with you, it's important to mention in that context, it's not like you have a secret agenda, because your families are engaged, your families are aware of this stuff. You're not teaching in a silo, you're teaching in a community, which is a big difference between having secret practice.
No, and thank you for putting that in, because that's really important. The first time I had the parents in the classroom, I told them exactly how I taught and exactly what to expect. I had said, lots of, because there were 8 other kindergartens around me. So their children's friends were going to come home with something completely different. And I said, you're going to see worksheets coming home, and your children are not going to be coming home with those things. Here's why. Here's how I'm going to address it. I'm going to be in conversation with the children. We're going to brainstorm, and you're going to see the results. So, and if they had any concerns, they could see me. And 4 years, not one complaint, because even my principal knew what I was doing. And this is crucial. It never works to be hidden. To me, to be fully owning of who I am. And if anything was required by the district, I did it. Like I didn't fight back. And that not fighting, like I had to test them, and testing young children is really difficult. If you've ever been through it, it's not fun. But I did that. But it also gave me permission to teach in alternative ways because they could see the results of my teaching, right? And if
Yeah.
I didn't produce those results, then I wouldn't be allowed to teach that way. And what I told my principal, I said, okay, I'm going to come at this in a different way. Give me until after Christmas. I'm going to build community first, and then we're going to hit the academics in an alternative way. But we'll be where everyone else is by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And he
So
said, you have 1 year.
it comes to agreement at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you're
Yeah.
saying about just saying the child's voice. I know it's such a simple consideration, and some teachers say, well, I do that. It's not just saying the child's voice, it's how you say that child's voice. You could say a child's name 40 times, but it could be Jack, 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 hey, Jack. And then he's got that reinforcement of like, oh, doing something wrong again. Oh, look out for the teacher again, opposed to
Yeah.
being gentle, being caring, considerate of that individual. And I think that's one of the traps. Our words mean so much. And we say the children. And yes, we do want to reach as many children and support childhood. However, they're a child, they're an individual trying to understand the world around them and those broader complexities.
Well, and I think that what's so interesting, like I had a parent reach out a couple of years ago and said they had gone to Dallas, Texas, and were in a museum with their children. And their son, who was at this time in high school, started explaining his thinking about a painting. And they looked at each other and go, where did he get this? And they both went, Mrs. Hoy, because in my classroom, the children were constantly bringing their theories and ideas about how things should be. This child who was in a family that, didn't do that level of consideration of his thoughts is now at Princeton University. Like when we give children, it's not just that they're telling us their ideas, it's that we're acting upon their viewpoint. Like he became a major force in my classroom when we began to consider, okay, this month in the classroom curriculum, we're learning about penguins. That's the state mandated. We can do all those worksheets that the state has given us, or what's another way we could study them? And I let the children help me create that curriculum.
And
And
tie it
that's where I
back.
think and so they got invested in it. They got intrigued by it. They would go home and want to study further. I, had parents all the time saying their children were staying, they'd have to beg them to go to bed because they were, trying to find out things to come back to class to share.
Yeah.
Like that's what we want,
Yeah.
you know,
Curiosity.
curiosity, but it takes trust.
How have you transferred all of this passion of yours over to Wunderled? What's that look like?
Oh, so good. I have worked really hard to share my perspective changes and also to acknowledge, anyone listening who is in a traditional setting doing traditional practice, we have to take care of ourselves first. When it comes to relationship, we have to take care of our relationship to ourselves and baby steps. I call it in my membership one meaningful change. One step forward is worth everything. Like we don't have to change everything overnight if we just move slowly. So what I try to provide are those easy one-off ways to begin to transform your practice. Because sometimes just making it through the day is what's in front of you. And again, I think we have to keep that priority. So in my own work, I try to keep the priority of your heart to that child's heart trumps anything. Like, I think the pandemic really brought out to me, I can't go, you know, this teacher is better than this teacher because this one's play based and this one's not. No, it's how are you relating to the children? What's your respect of that child? So I think in my work, I try to keep it grounded in that it's, again, as Parker Palmer said, deep to deep, it's soul to soul. That's, to me, trumps everything. And then the next layer is what's best for young children is play-based education. But start with what that matters most, your heart. Your
Yeah.
heart, children's heart.
And there's a timely reminder in that due to the current circumstance, I know in the States, from a funding standpoint, perception of teachers standpoint, state per state. In Australia, we're having our own challenge around child safety incidents within the early childhood sector, especially early childhood. I remember when I was an educator and brought a family member, I'll say, said, "Why don't you become a real teacher?" And there's that perception of early childhood. Just, it's still, unfortunately, babysitters. It's still, unfortunately, look after them. They're done. And then when they push through the school, I'm seeing more and more, it's a family's expectation for the school to do the work, to develop that child, to understand their identity. And I think the current generation are falling into that gap, and not academically falling through the cracks, but that secure attachment falling through the cracks. So what's your encouragement to educators that might be feeling a bit stuck within the sector, where they're going, how they're making a difference? No pressure,
I
solve it all.
Yeah. Well, and what I found, I can only speak from the trenches of my own experience. And what I finally did was owned my own expertise, is that I owned who I was and the importance of who I was. And there's something about, like, I was, at the time, it was in like 96, 97, I had precancer and this whole kind of brush with cancer. And the first doctor I went to did not own his expertise. And I felt extremely tragic in the room with him. Like, I cannot trust this dude with my health, like, this is not going to work. So I started asking around, who should I go to? And this one name came up, and I went to this doctor, and he was unbelievably comforting because he was at home in his skin. He talked with great authority and understanding of what I was facing. And I was like, that's who I need to be for, because on the outside, for me, it's not about, I can't change society's point of view of me. That's not something I can do, but I can absolutely own who I am, the wisdom I hold, the love, the care, the commitment. And when I worked for Head Start with homeless children, I learned something really important, is that I had to address every family, no matter what they gave me, that they were coming to me with good intent. So I had a a father come to me in the middle of the cafeteria when I was walking, 26 children out to the pickup line, and he starts yelling in my face. My daughter hates school. She's never hated school. What are you going to do about it? And he was a bodybuilder, and like, I could feel his spit hitting my face. Because of my training with Head Start, I literally said to him without a beat, I wish every father cared that deeply about their child. I heard his intent. I didn't take it personally. He literally dropped his defense. I said, let me get these children to their parents and we'll talk. So I learned how to take every parent for their best intent, because if I don't have them on my team, I don't have the child. And so I also worked really hard. I had another grandmother come up to me and said, my grandson said he didn't get snack. Why aren't you feeding him snack? And, I was like, of course we feed him snack. But again, best intent. I just said, okay, you know what? I'm going to shadow him and make sure he gets his snack. I'm there for you. I said, whatever it takes, you let me know. We're a team, and I bumped her fist and she started sobbing and said, his mother is diabetic, is in the hospital, and we don't know if she'll live.
Wow.
So, like, sometimes you don't know what they're walking in, yelling at you about. But if we look at them and always go, whatever they're saying to me is their good intent, just like a child, it's a good intent. If I can hear what's underneath of it and find collaboration.
Yeah. That's such in the secret sauce. It's easy to jump in, well, parents do this, or teachers do that, or the system does this. What's the common ground? Let's meet there. Parents don't
And
want bad for their children. They want the best. Going through a journey with my son, like struggle and transition to school, diagnosis journey, and teachers saying that, like, we commonly want the best for the child, and we've got to look for those common grounds to use as a foundation. Not what makes
and
us different, what makes us similar.
that's it. And I think what happens, what I found, because I worked with homeless families, and they were no different from the families of wealth I worked with. All of them wanted what was best. So I'd be talking to a meth addict, and they were fighting for the future of their child. And it really changed me that we have to stand in the future with, like, and this is probably my biggest tip, is stand in, like, I put Sally myself into the future. And I'm like, where do I want this child and their family to be 5 years from now? How can I advocate? How can I be the one that makes the difference now? That I'm going to believe in their child. I don't care if their child's throwing the table across the room. I'm going to go, they're such a leader. They're going to, they're not going to tolerate anything. It's like
The passion.
the passion.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm standing for that child, advocating for them with their parents, having their parents believe in them, we're all like, we're fighting for the future of this child's life. Like, it
Yeah.
really is that dire. And I know some people are like, sister, calm down. But but it's like, it's so, like, we are so important. And I want whoever's listening, I see you. You may not get the recognition, you may not get the pay that you deserve, but I see you. You are making a difference that will last the rest of this child's life. Like, that's worth
Hoorah, as the
all.
Americans.
That's worth
Absolutely.
everything. Like, go to bed at night and hug yourself and go, you know what? This is worth it. If
Yeah.
not me, who?
Yeah. And a fantastic exercise that Sandra Duncan said, I think, and you alluded to doing the same thought exercise. Flash forward 20 years, ask your teachers, ask your parents, what are the attributes you want to see in that child in 20 years? They don't start talking about alphabet or maths or color recognition. Kindness universally is number one. Support that child's kind. It's about the character, and it leads back to that observation, and something I like to do and encourage educators to do learning stories on the character of the children and
Yeah.
what you see in them, and look at the difference and observe the alignment that you come into with parents, because you're on the same page about what you do. You're meeting them where they're at. And flash forward, no one mentions ABCs, no one mentions that. Kindness, being able to regulate, helping others, good mental health. Yeah. And
Yeah.
let's teach that then.
Oh,
Let's come
I
back to that
love
alone.
that.
And you see people
Yes.
go, and this thing that, we get parents like, why aren't they reading yet? Why aren't they writing a pen yet? Meet them where they're at. Where do we want the best for your child? You want the best in this way. And you can get your geek on. Teach them about their serve and returns and the physical techniques that you use that you can transfer over to them. Team up. A village to raise a
Yeah,
child.
I love that.
That's
That's it right there.
yeah. When it comes to Wunderled, you encourage educators to embrace curiosity and creativity. How do you go about that? Because the moment when I advocate for creativity, so many adults are just like, oh, I just don't have a creative bone in my body. It's not me. I don't like craft. I don't like this. What do you say to those teachers? Because for me, creativity comes from curiosity.
Well, I think another way I like to put it is follow your passion, and do not be afraid to have your passion alive in the classroom. Maybe like I had a co-teacher once that was passionate about bird watching. And so like I'd have her bring photos of the birds that she took pictures of, and she had binoculars, so could we'd all go look out the windows at the birds. It's like, what is it that lights you up that you can hardly wait to get to? I had another coworker who loved cooking, and so she would lead the children in cooking. As I think creativity happens in anything that you're passionate about. I'm passionate about business now.
Yeah.
I'm creative with it, you
And
know?
when we're passionate, we're getting out of that adult mind and aligning with the child's way of thinking because we're engrossed in the moment and not worrying about the outcome. And for
Boom.
play, children are about the moment. Don't care about your scaffolding, Tanya. I'm just doing what I'm doing. And we can come
Yeah.
along. It's a great technique to come alongside children instead of in front of them.
Yeah.
I worked with a center and we talk about superpowers and knocking down those walls. I'm passionate about messy play, mud play. If you're not going to let your children go outside and do that because you got sensory processing, you just don't like it, it's not for you, call me. I've got you. I had one service where the girl was really into CrossFit. It'd be rest
Yeah.
time and I'm like, where is she? And she'd be busting out push-ups at rest time. Like, so when it comes to physical literacy, who am I calling?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
one who loved hip hop, so we actually did an end of the year hip hop, performance
Yeah.
because she taught them all hip hop. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
And it doesn't have to stay exclusively to skills.
No.
I worked with one lady and she came from a family daycare background, and this is a big sector in the States compared to Australia, family daycare. She was older. She was so calm all the time. You could have that child that was having that emotional response, and you'd be like, call Irene. And she'd be like, come here, my darling, no matter what. That was her superpower. You'd be like, I'm struggling here with with this. Call her in. I'll sub you out. Let's go. And that's that broader ecosystem. You got your microclimate of the room. Utilize that broader climate. It's that diversity of opportunity,
It
that
is.
diversity of experience that then creates resilience in the overall environment. A bit of Bron for Brennan Geek.
Yes.
It's so
And I think
important.
it's and I think it goes back to honoring the identity. Like, again, I'm big about, the educator needs to be, seen, needs to feel they're significant. And when we honor the passions of each educator, their superpower, as you put it, then they feel seen. It's hard to have children seen if we're not seen. And, by allowing the differences, even like in coworkers, to be able to hold the differences we have,
Yeah.
it's magic.
Yeah.
We're not the same.
Yeah. And it comes down to the psychology around we all want to be significant.
We do.
And that
Yeah.
significance can come in what we would deem a positive behavior or a negative behavior. So it's universal there. In your view, what's the biggest misconception about play in the early years?
That it's chaos. I think a really well done play-based education is not chaos. It's not lacking structure. It's not lacking guidance for children. In fact, my experience having taught in a traditional setting versus a play-based setting is the play-based setting was called far more out of me. I'm observing, I'm documenting, I'm, going around supporting interests. So I think so often we say play-based child-led is chaos. I say if you've seen that, it's just an educator who's learning. They haven't figured it all out yet. You know, they haven't built. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of expertise,
And a lot of letting go.
and a lot of letting go. Yes,
The
it
surrender
does.
is real.
It is so real. And it's a completely different way of being with children,
Mm.
right? So, just like in a regular classroom, if it gets too loud, I'm not going to allow that to be because it's not safe. I need to be able to have an ear for safety, right? Like there's all those kinds of management things that are different but the same, different contexts, but it's not a wild free for all where children are telling the educators what to do. And the educators, like I've actually seen educators who were afraid to tell the children no.
Yeah.
It's like,
It swings the other way. No, we do play-based. There's no rules. I was like, you're setting this
what?
child up for failure. They're going
Exactly.
to walk out
That's
the
not.
door. The world's not like that.
No, and if I have a whole atelier full of paint, I'm sure as heck am not gonna allow that paint to go into my block area and all of the loose parts there as an open free for all. Like if I bring really wonderful materials, I'm not gonna allow them to be destroyed. Like they'll go, "Oh, the children destroyed everything." I'm like, "Where were you?" It's
Yeah.
like you just allowed that. That's not play-based, that's just lack of guidance.
Yeah. And I am a firm believer. I was discussing with a board from New York this morning that it's not about going just here you go, run free, or equally, here's all the resources you need, everything's perfect, you got a perfect environment. The best environments, the best relationships come from a really confident and evolved practice through observation, testing, and applying. That's how you're going to best meet their needs. Finding the Pinterest photo and putting that in your room is not going to do it.
Not gonna do it.
Finding a catalog and selecting something out of catalog and buying it is not going to do it unless you have that connection in relationship
And I
and
think
that
that
connection with families. When I say relationship,
mhm.
child and families as well.
And I think that too, like introducing the environment to the children and setting expectations and, actually modeling and being with the children so they can see the potentiality of the tools. Like I had a whole cycle of how I did that with children so that I just didn't let them loose.
As a practical tip for our listeners, because we have so many educators, what did that
Yes.
process look like about that introduction?
So what I literally would open each area, so we'll say the art atelier or the block atelier, that I would open it up and put out materials and start one introducing it, having them explore in art or in blocks, and we would literally collaborate. So I'd have in blocks we'd um, sit around and I would introduce where everything was at, and I didn't have everything out at this point. Like with 4-year-olds, I'm going to have enough that they can manage, pick up, and then slowly build it as they get used to it. But I would start building something and have a conversation with them to help me build. And so that of course, in the beginning, they're so quiet as they start building with me, but that we're actually talking about the materials, looking at how we can use them. I would even hold an object and go, I wonder what we could do with this. What could this be? And a child would jump in and go, I know what we could do with it, and we would it would be, I would literally take 6 weeks to open up all the centers and all of the materials so that there was this atmosphere of respect, and that I'm treating them with respect. I'm showing them where they go. We're like, when we were done collaborating, we're all putting those things back. I'm giving them feedback. Yeah, that's where that goes. So that, thanks. Give me 5. We got it. Um, I just found that children, when you open it slow, gentle respect with them beside you, it's different.
Yeah, definitely. And it might seem like a minor thing, and why can't they just follow rules? Who loves being told what to do? But when it's a collective idea, and that's an interesting task I invite people to do with their teachers, to say, who loves being told what to do here? No one raises
Mhm.
their hand. But then we look at children and say, well, they just should. They can, doesn't mean it's good. But when we make it about co-creating our experiences together, we're jointly hypothesizing, we're
That's it.
testing together, we're reflecting together. It's coming to that agreement.
And it's also for children who don't know how, like I hear all the time, children don't know how to play like they used to. Then I'm also modeling that. I'm modeling how the materials can be used. I'm asking questions. They're collaborating in that creation. And so, I might go to the block center for a whole week, us doing that before I formally open it. And what I found was more um, complexity would happen in their play, more asking for my assistance if they needed something. It just became a whole different level than in my early days. I would just have all the centers ready and let them loose. It, it
Yeah.
it's it was, yeah.
You end up with the pinball effect, overwhelm, emotional responses, and then you're like, I've got to manage this. I love a word that
Exactly.
you mentioned there, and you said, I'm wondering. That's one of my
Mhm.
favorite phrases to come back to. I'm wondering. You're wondering about a child's experience. It's my business. So if that child chooses, as you mentioned earlier, serve and return, I'll put something out there. If they hit it back, it's on their terms. It's not me saying, peppering with questions and saying, you're going to hit this back. I don't care what the answer is. You just better hit it back. And then they learn what's the answer they want. I'll serve that back to them. But
Mm,
I'm
mhm.
wondering, and children becoming the question answerers, not the creators. How was your day?
Right.
What did you do today? And they're like, what's the answer they want? Good. All right. Did that suffice? But I'm wondering how my son's feeling. I'm wondering how he's feeling. And once again, off to the side in the distance, verbalizing, I'm wondering this. Sometimes he'll come back, sometimes he won't. It's a
Mhm.
superpower. I'm wondering how this works. I love that.
It is amazing, and I think and that's one of the techniques I love the most is thinking out loud with children. Is like, I look and go, "I'm thinking I really wanna put the candlesticks out, but I'm wondering if they could go here or here, not sure," and then they feel the openness to put their thinking in,
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking out loud. It helps them see
Yep.
the thinking process of play.
100%. Some partners of ours, amazing service, Winston Glades Early Learning Center, the team out there, phenomenal. They were changing their language and they were using wondering. And one day the child, I don't know the teacher's name, but the child goes, it looks like you're wondering again, Miss Amy. And they did a
Love
group
it.
reflection saying, maybe we're using this a little bit too much. So verbalizing outside, I'm wondering, is also, otherwise it seems like just a passive question.
Yeah.
Little thought there. How have you managed, or tips that you can give educators on cultivating strong community?
Mm,
You've managed to do this across oceans.
yeah.
How, and what are the tips to educators?
So one thing I think is really important in community is, one, to know who's in the community. So, honoring culture and um, faith walks. So, like, I know that I have in my bigger teacher community lots of different faith walks. So I make sure I offer things on Sunday. I offer things on days that honors all people in my ecosystem. Inside the classroom, I think that respect for each human being and who their family is, to me, it all starts with deep, deep respect for the child and their family, for my colleagues, even if their pedagogy is different, that they're not gonna change towards mine unless I respect them. So everything starts with respect and trust in the innate goodness of who's in the room. So I think for me, it's always hit that. And then the funny thing is when I in Head Start with the children that were, really at risk, my first day of class, they were 3-year-olds. As a lead teacher, 2 assistants, 18 children, and they were literally jumping off the tables. It was like wild, like building community I was like, I don't even know if it's possible, right? One child had been in 13 foster homes, another child had been thrown out of a car. Like we're talking trauma, right? And so I am a huge drum person. I love drumming. So I had enough drums for all the children. So I put the drums out and we did drumming circle. So I would do talking drum and then they talk back. And then, we would, I'd have other children do something, and we all talk back the same. And that made community. So sometimes I think it's doing something in unison, like we go crazy, the huge sound and then quiet. And so that synced movement created something. I think it's that synchronization of intention that moves people together. You have to feel that shared purpose. And for young children, sometimes it takes a unification in an actual act together. The other thing I found that's unified my class is when we've taken on a project like, even with the children at risk, we gathered material and made blankets for babies, and they
Beautiful.
love that. We had homeless mothers coming in and using the sewing machines to make blankets for babies at risk in the
That's so
hospital,
fantastic.
you
It's
know.
that emotional contagion, isn't it? It's like being around other people that believe the same thing. And in recent times, with so much polarization of beliefs and people and culture and identity, I love what you said there, is founded in respect of your beliefs, your choices. I can still respect that. Do I need to endorse it? No, but I can respect it. And we can unite in that respect as well. And well, that if that's your intent, that's exactly why you've built such a great big community here. It's
Yeah.
a testament to you. It's fantastic.
I was in New York City for the No Kings parade, and we were just going to go and see it. We knew it was happening while we were traveling through the city, and there was at least 100,000 people marching, and so um, there was 4 of us traveling. So we jumped into the mix and started marching because it was something that we stood for. But what I really got in that experience with that unification of literally hundreds of thousands of people marching with their right to express themselves. And I was thinking as I was there, I was like getting really emotional that I wish in America we could come together and respect that every American has the right to their belief, but then we have to find our common ground for the common good.
Yeah.
I love that I had the right to march.
Yeah.
It was exhilarating. And I wouldn't wanna take away someone else's perspective, even if it was different than mine. I don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
I
And
believe
through
that.
my own experience traveling through the States and getting asked questions from an Australian perspective, saying, oh, is everything all right over there? Like, is it safe? I say, it doesn't matter where you sit politically. what I observe in people is it's people saying, well, I have a responsibility to do what I can based on my beliefs. That's it. It's like, comes back to how am I being in my community? How do I support people? And that's like, maybe it's a jaded view, but only based in my experience, that's the conversations I've had, which I
Well,
really like.
and in my own family, we have split views. My brother has a completely different political stand than I do. And we've really learned to respect each other's differences. And I think the missing piece, I think there's more of that happening, um, is to have the voice of the people for what we want for the people,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
it's, it happens in political systems, right?
Yeah.
They
Happens
break
in
down.
happens in life.
It happens in
Happens in
life.
life. You
It
know,
does.
get two people in the room, one likes cilantro and one doesn't. It's there as well.
Oof.
That's sensitive,
Big
eh?
time. It's very sensitive.
Coriander, cilantro, we all call it different things.
Yeah.
If for the people listening today, that have really loved what you're saying and feel alignment with it and want to connect on a level to be a part of this community, where can they find you? What's the next steps?
Yeah, definitely check out Wunderled Teaching on Instagram, Facebook, and of course our site Wunderled. We have a free library you can come into and taste different pieces of our work. So I think that would be probably a great next step. Yeah.
And personally, I'll encourage the listeners, if you want inspiration, grab a blog, share it with your teammates, do a group reflection on it. They're fantastic. They're from a global perspective. So apply that and you'll be grateful for your actions, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you.
And they can find books there as well.
Yeah, I have a new book out called Nurturing Brilliance, and you can get it on Amazon and your favorite, like Barnes and Noble, those places. Yeah, really proud of it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic. And when's that out?
it's out now.
Out
Came out
now.
in July. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Link will be in the description. All the links to Wunderled, all the links to Instagram, all in the show notes. Sally Haughey, you inspire me. I'm grateful for you. There's a few little reminders in there for me personally about aligning with my mission and how I go about that, and having that servant heart and being removed about what I can do, opposed to what I can inspire in people. So
Mm,
I thank you for that personally.
thank,
You're
thank
amazing.
you. You're amazing. Thank you for your generosity of having me. I appreciate it.
See you next time. Stay playful.